camera. I'm turning on the camera.
All right, everybody, we are officially going to begin the meeting. You've heard that the meeting is being recorded. We are just delighted and very pleased that you are interested in HoCo by design and trying to help us make that a report that appropriately recognizes our concerns and our interests. Few housekeeping things. If you would mute yourself if you have not. And we will have an opportunity to exchange in, with a audio exchange, a couple opportunities throughout the meeting. But in the meantime, if you have questions, just throw them, or comments, just throw them into the chat, please. We will be capturing that. We'll also have a Q&A comment period, and you'll get not only the slides, but that you'll see today, but also a written copy of the document, or the coalition's recommendations that you will, and draft comments that we'll be talking about today. Okay, we are meeting here because, as I said, HoCo by design is the focus of this meeting. It's been a 2-year process. We've been anticipating it. It was released, the draft plan, December 1. We have a 15-person steering committee of the coalition that has gone down into the weeds and reviewed the plan, and we've developed a proposed response, which we'll tell you about a bit later. And again, we're going to gather your feedback today, and you'll have opportunity to provide us some other feedback as over the next couple of weeks. And we will show you how to actually submit formal comments to the Department of Planning and Zoning, who have planned this meeting. So that's kind of our goal, to get through the meeting today. And I will remind you that the coalition's overriding priority is, bottom line, the increase of number of affordable housing units across the county over time. That is our primary purpose and goal, and around which we try to focus our energy and our resources. And the current focus, and the best way to do that now, is by our focus is the HoCo by Design General Plan. And just a quick reminder, we go over this, but we always have newcomers and everything, that the general plan in our county is a long-term vision for growth, land use, and preservation. And it encompasses, it looks forward to the next 20 years. It's updated every 10 years or so, since the middle of the last century. And it sets the purpose of the plan is to set policy. It is not to get into the weeds for how we do things or not, but it provides a framework for how the county will move forward in the areas of housing, transportation, employment, natural resources, parks, and community character. So again, it is a foundational policy document. The draft release came out December 1, and the graphic here is an actual screenshot of, if you go into the HoCo by Design website, this is what you will get. See that first box, press comment now. That's how you enter it. It's fairly straightforward in terms of going through it. We have provided here, I think Dawn will be putting in the chat, the link to the website itself. And we have created a PDF. So when you go to the website, each chapter has its own click box and set of documents. We've created, just for ease of reading through it, for those of you who want to kind of search the whole thing, a PDF of the plan too, and we'll provide those not only in the chat, but when we do our follow-up from this meeting, those links will be provided also. I would like to now introduce Paul Casey, who is a member of our steering committee and steeped in land use, zoning, affordable housing issues. And Paul's going to kind of walk through and give kind of a general overall perspective of how the coalition has come to look at the plan and how it's gotten to its recommendations. Paul?
Thank you, Jackie. And I have to say, it is really very encouraging to see so many people committed to the promotion and development of affordable housing throughout the county online today. We are, if nothing else, stronger because we work together collaboratively, all of us, to achieve these objectives. So thank you. And the other thing I want to say is that when Jackie told us on the steering committee that the plan had been released on December 1st, and that we should review it so that we can discuss it and help in this process of response, we went to look at it, and it is more than 450 pages long. And that's not to dissuade anybody from going and reviewing every single page, but it's to let you know that it could be a daunting task. And what we hope to do today is to kind of highlight what we consider to be the overarching concerns and themes, and then use that as a basis for maybe ongoing suggestions, comments that will help us all get a better HoCo by design. So as Jackie indicated, this is actually the 7th general plan for the county. It's supposed to take us through 2040. And in the process of getting this plan published, the county planning department and the consultants did exceptional work. I mean, this actually began in March of 2020, just as COVID began to lock us all down, and they worked through that challenge to come up with a whole variety of recommendations for transportation, commercial and residential development, concerns for the need for conservation and ecology and preservation of land. So a lot of things came together in this report, and there were more than 100 meetings and thousands of comments to it. Now, with all of that said, it's important for us just for the moment to focus on the housing component and what we need to work with. So the key housing data in the draft plan are first, which is kind of surprising, but we currently have an undersupply, a pent-up demand of about 20,000 housing units in this county, of which probably about 7,000 or 8,000 are affordable units that are needed but aren't out there. Now, in addition, the report points out that through 2040, it's anticipated that with the strong economic growth that our county has, we should be able to add about 59,000 jobs. The 59,000 jobs would generate a need for roughly 31,000 more housing units. So you can see, looking at the picture of the housing need that the HoCo by Design people put out there, we have a pent-up demand of unmet need. We are going to create more jobs, assuming strong economic growth, which will create a greater demand for roughly a total of 51,000 units if we were to meet every unit that was called for. Now, the point that the county HoCo by Design made, however, was that this is really a critical inflection point for our county. It's a critical inflection point because we have an increasing demand, we expect added growth, and yet we want to ensure that we have affordable and attainable housing for everybody who wants to work here and live here. So that takes care of the people who were actually the 20,000 that would like to work, that are working here but live elsewhere, plus the people that we expect to come. Now, the problem is that in order to do this, we need to continue to invest and expand housing opportunities. And if we in fact have, I think, a very positive image in our county. We have so many things going for us: our parks, our schools, our cultural facilities, the fact that this is a desirable place to work, and it is one of the, frankly, one of the safest and one of the wealthiest counties in the country. So all these things going for us, how are we going to meet the demand that we already have pent up and that is coming? Well, one thing to keep in mind is that there's often the criticism that with this demand and this increase in housing, we will actually place a greater burden on our infrastructure, making it more difficult. It will strain the infrastructure. It'll be more costly. And so maybe we should limit our growth. Well, what I think is fascinating is that the fiscal analysis done by HoCo by Design says that, and I think we took this language directly from the report, that new growth would generate more revenues than costs for our services and infrastructure. And that's in part due to the fact that in Maryland counties, we have multiple key revenue sources. So not only do people who live here pay property taxes, but if you're renting a unit here, you actually pay income taxes, a portion of which comes back to our county. So we get additional resources by the way our tax structure works. The result is that this residential and non-residential increase results in a net positive fiscal impact, so that we actually have more revenues than we would have increased costs. So that the bottom line, and I'm quoting from a report, new growth being able to add more jobs and create more housing would generate more revenues than it would cost for services and infrastructure. So now we have this picture: pent-up demand, more jobs, increased demand. Providing for all of that will allow us to continue to grow economically. And the result will be that we should be able to have more, I think, more growth and more opportunities. Now, what are our concerns about this? Well, let's go back. The lead in here is that the plan falls far short. I would say it is dramatically disappointing, because we've already said we'll have a housing need of roughly 51,000 homes, meeting the pent-up demand and the job growth. However, the plan proposes a residential growth number of 1,400 units a year, 500 fewer than the current 6th general plan calls for, which is roughly 1,900, I think, and 40 units. So it's actually reducing, even though the demand is going up. Now, the result is that we'll have a projected new housing produced of 25,000 homes, but a housing shortfall of 26,000 homes. So we begin with, I would say, a step back. We've made this critical inflection point, which gives us the opportunity to make a decision to find ways to build the needed housing, actually makes a wrong turn. And I want to put in perspective one thing. The primary reason why I think HoCo by Design creates this lower number is because they point out that there's less than 2% of available land for development in Howard County. And so because we're almost either completely developed or preserved in farmland or owned by the government, I mean, there just aren't that many new places where we can build housing. But the plan offers all kinds of opportunities, which I think Jackie's going to go into, which give you ways in which we can develop more housing. And whether we're talking about more vertical construction, whether we're talking about accessory dwelling units, whether we're talking about creative use of county land to provide for affordable housing, what we need to do is to say, we can't step back. I think the coalition believes that together, all of us should be able, hopefully, to come up with ideas collectively that can say we can at least address the need and provide for at least the same goal that we have now, which is about 1,900 a year. We don't want to create more of a crisis, because if we allow the 1,400 unit target to remain, it will make our housing crisis worse. The cost of housing will go up. Infrastructure will actually require higher tax revenues, and we will limit our economic growth. So I think the bottom line is the target is inadequate to meet this inflection point, and we must somehow come together to develop what we need as constructive approaches to trying to get to the point we need, which is to provide for at least 1,900 to 2,000 more units a year. So with that background, Jackie, I invite you to delve more deeply into what we might be able to think about.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you very much. So with that background, and Paul very eloquently and I think passionately expressed the concern And we, as a steering committee body, as Paul said, kind of poured through everything. And our conclusion was the best way to respond. And there are, in those 400 pages, as you can imagine, I forget how many, there's 100 plus policy recommendations and implementation strategies and lots of data and everything. And we're trying to, do we take on this? Do we take on that? And I think what we finally came to, and I'm going to go back to the original statement of the goal of the Housing Affordability Coalition is to create more housing units. And so that's, after considering everything, that's where we have focused on how can we make the most difference? How can the plan create the most housing units? And we have come back to keeping it simple. And what we've come back to is the Housing Opportunities Master Plan, which for the past couple of years, 3 years, you heard us talk about. We have a plan. HoCo by Design says the plan should incorporate the master plan ideas, but it doesn't specifically, the housing target it sets are fewer than what the master plan produced. So what we came back to is let's just go back and state, integrate into the HoCo by Design those housing targets, which have already been, accepted by the county and guidance for that. And we'll go through, and I'll just go through them very quickly. One of the targets was for housing growth, which would be essentially 70 new housing units for every 100 jobs per year, equaling 2,000 units. And Paul mentioned, so we're trying to get to at least what we're doing now, 1,900 units. Affordability was the next target. So 15% of all net new housing units, or 300 units a year, making less than 60% of AMI each year. So that's the affordability target that we suggest is appropriate to be integrated into this plan. The next target is accessibility. We know what a lack of units and the high costs for people that in our community that just can't find physically accessible homes. So what we're suggesting is 10% of all new housing units be set aside for persons with disabilities. Preservation. We have aging housing properties in our community, such as, let's go to Roslyn Rise. Enterprise is redeveloping those 5 units within Columbia. We cannot lose any units of affordability. So if someone is proposing to redevelop a property, we have to ensure that we don't lose any affordability, and of course, hopefully gain more units as we go through. So because we have such little land to build on, we have to take advantage of every single opportunity that we can to preserve what we already have. And then in the redevelopment area, starting with this, that we need a one-for-one replacement of affordability units. And the county-wide is important there to help us with deconcentration that we all are familiar with and concerned about. So beyond the housing targets in the plan, they have, the plan contains some recommendations that we think need to be, again, clear, just incorporated into and articulated through the HoCo by Design. And those recommendations are to revise land use planning zoning regs to improve, as you can read there. And they have a host of examples and suggestions for how to do that within the plan, which are fully articulated in our document, in our proposed plan. But some examples of this are providing incentives for income restricted housing, support lower cost housing types. In the plan, they call that typology, and remove zoning barriers in mixed use communities, of which there are some, and anybody interested in getting into the weeds of these, we are delighted to talk with you about. Second recommendation in the plan is supporting housing stability and affordability through the improvements of existing policies and programs, as well as creations of new ones. And some examples of this are raising new capital for affordable housing production, creating a strategy for multifamily preservation, and expanding home ownership opportunities. And I just want to state that these are verbatim, these recommendations from the Housing Opportunities Master Plan. So we're just suggesting that the HoCo by Design integrate these as a 2+ year process with an advisory committee, and people from all over the county came up with these ideas. So we want to underscore the importance of having them. And the final recommendation is to find creative ways to meet demands for housing infrastructure and consider targeted APO amendments to improve predictability. And there's APO is a whole nother issue that we want to get into, but we are not going to get into today, but clearly needs to be addressed as we go forward. So we support and believe strongly that the county needs to support funding for housing and for schools. APO obviously is a barrier, is a challenge to overcome with schools that are over capacity. We fully support the development of schools and the long-range planning and finding new ways to develop those schools so that they become perhaps a little more affordable to help us catch up with need and prepare for future needs. And there will be and evaluate APO to see how we can strengthen it for the growth that, as the numbers bear out, that we clearly need, and creatively use land assets in the county. And that means that the county already owns properties and buildings. Can they be repurposed? So physical assets as well as land that they own. So those are some examples that we think would make the plan, the HoCo by Design, stronger. So those two recommendations relate to the Housing Opportunities Master Plan. We have two other recommendations that do not, that are simply. So one of them is to refine the proposed FLUM, future land use map. So that's an acronym we'll begin to throw around a whole lot more. And this is the land map that they propose, and it's too small to get into the kind of the weeds of it, and we don't want to, but it becomes the picture of what they are proposing, and those small little things you read. This map concludes everything about everything from where people live, rural and rural crossroads, recreation, open space. It includes downtown Columbia and industrial opportunity, regional activity centers, a transit activity center that's being proposed. And so this is kind of suburban retail, suburban office. This includes a whole lot of, this includes the picture of our county and where things currently are, and suggests to some degree where things might be going in the future. We, go ahead, next slide. We are suggesting that the map be modified to promote housing equity and deconcentration of lower income household neighborhoods. And specifically, I know the HoCo by Design team is looking at activities, and there's things like increased vertical density that's not really included in the map. It's kind of hard to see where they envision these things. And we think that this map should be inclusive of kind of where they could be more inclusive, but also a little more directive, perhaps, of where they think these things can be placed, how land can be used to increase opportunities for housing. And we're also suggesting that they propose the opportunities to use the plan tools. It kind of matches what I said before. And those example are, and these are things that for those of you who have been following this for a while have heard before. Where would accessory dwelling units best fit or are most reasonably expected that we could fit them in? The missing middle housing. And again, Paul mentioned using public land, public assets, and the co-development of where we could develop some of these public-private things going forward, such as a co-developed opportunity where we will, that's moving down the pike, will be the new cultural center in Columbia with the affordable housing, artist flats built on top, the example of those kinds of things. And our final recommendation is to strengthen the gateway recommendation. It is currently talked about in the plan, but the only thing it essentially says is that it has great opportunity, and that opportunity can be developed, should be developed through a master planning process, which will start sometime. And to give you a sense of the opportunity in Gateway for affordable housing, and all sorts of other, and all the other infrastructure issues that are priorities within the county offers. Gateway has about 1,000 square foot, I believe. No, 1,000 acres to, no.
About 1,000 acres, Jackie, yes.
Thank you, 1,000 acres, Paul. Okay, compared to Columbia that has about 500 acres.
Downtown.
Downtown Columbia, right. So again, what an incredible opportunity this that Gateway has for us. And I think everybody is looking for that future. But that's all the plan says about it. It is an opportunity, and it will be fleshed out, if you will, in a separate planning process. We are suggesting that HoCo by design include clear targets for commercial housing, school capacity transportation as the foundation for that development of that master plan. Not to wait until the planning process starts to see kind of what we need or whatever, but to integrate clear targets for that. How is that going to mesh? So it becomes a jumping off place, if you will, for the planning process. This is what we want to accomplish, and let the planning process identify kind of how to meet those targets going forward. And we also suggest, because it talks about 5 years developing that plan, and I know there's some preliminary work already going on, but that they really accelerate the development of that plan as moving forward to help accelerate the increase of affordable housing within the county. So those are our 4 recommendations relating to just integrate the housing opportunities master plan targets and recommendations, to modify the future land use map, and to strengthen the gateway recommendation. And those are all, we think, enable incorporation of the many tools that HoCo by design currently lays out that can be used here, you know, ADUs, missing middle, and to us, if we get these recommendations into the plan, it sets us up for still a lot of work to do, but it sets us up for success, and it will clearly articulate a county vision that has, that has some, that is clear, that has the targets, that says this is who we want to be in our county. And I am think I speak on behalf of the steering committee that say, we of course focus on housing. We think I would imagine people that are focused on transportation or infrastructure or conservation and ecology, I think might be thinking the same thing, that they want to know precisely, where are we trying to go? Let's tell us that. And then over the years through the next parts of this process of implementing this vision, will evolve. We know where we want to go, and then we just have to figure out how to get there. So that's kind of the overview of the coalition steering committee's proposed approach to the plan and response. And we recognize that each of you on this call has a specific, or probably has a specific interest, whether it's housing for people with disabilities, whether it's seniors, and we encourage you to, as you think about your comments, encourage you to expand what we're saying, to clarify for the HoCo by Design people, how this is important for those populations, those issues that you represent and care about. So let me stop there and ask if for comments, questions, go ahead and unmute your microphone, and Dana and Dawn will try to call on you, and our little team here will try to answer as best we can.
Hi, this is Sharonda Huffman from Maryland Inclusive Housing. This is a great presentation. Now I have like we have a housing committee. It would be helpful. I don't know, you normally do send out minutes and stuff. Do you know how soon you'll be able to send out these materials so we can have a guideline for comments from our partners?
It is, our goal is to have them put together and out to you within the next day or two.
And Sharonda, I'd also like to mention that we realize that the daytime timing of this event is, not the best for some people who would want to be here. So we are planning to basically repeat this session one evening next week, maybe Wednesday or Thursday. We'll have the final answer on that in the communication that goes out. So Sharonda, feel free to forward the invitation to that event to anybody who wants to participate, but you'll have the meeting materials at the same time you receive that invitation.
And let me just add that we are certainly willing to come out and talk with your housing committee or others and other groups in person, whatever that means these days, if you would like that.
Oh, awesome. Because actually I have a meeting, if you're available, on Thursday, the 19th from 3 to 5:30, because it's on my agenda. So I was going to talk about it. If one of y'all can talk about it, that's even better. I can send you an email.
Please,
Please
yeah.
do. Please
Okay.
do.
Thank you. Any suggestions about what you was there anything that you didn't see in the recommendations that you were expecting to be there based on what you know of the plan itself, or of the housing crisis that we're experiencing in Howard County? Did we touch the issue that you're concerned about?
Hi, this is Bertina Super Hanley, and I'm in the organizations, but I'm basically here to represent myself. I have kids that have graduated from college. I know of people that have kids with special needs that are adult age. So my question may not be for this forum, but I'll ask it and you'll let me know. My question is about the way that the houses will be designed. Will we have input? Well, after this HoCo by Design has been accepted or approved, what is the next step after that? Because to me, it doesn't seem like it's a lot of mixed use housing in Howard County. It's a lot of Ryan homes going up and they all look cookie cutter. And the other, like the apartments or condos that are going up are kind of like stacking rather than made for noise prevention. So what is the next step after this? Or do you happen to know it? I know that you're working on this, project, but as far as this being able to
Right.
provide input.
So I would answer, let me start, and then Dana and Paul, you may have other things to say. I would say, number one, absolutely include your concerns in your comments and get those to them. And there is recognition in the plan about the need for diversified housing types and accessible units. So I would encourage you to share your concern. The next step after this, and the next place to share is just, and I think to me, the bottom line is please make sure the plan includes suggestions for how we can respond to the needs of this community. But the next step, actually, I'm going to let Dana, do you want to, I don't want to jump into your next, to your presentation. So if you hold
Well,
that thought for just a minute, go ahead, Dana.
Well, I could just add on top of what you just said, Bertina, that the planners in the draft HoCo by design document spent a lot of time talking about what housing could look like over the next 20 years and evolve into. And exactly as you said, we have a lot of the county for a long time through zoning regimes has favored single family attached housing on, fairly large lots. And that's the bulk of the county, if you look at the footprint of the county. To support all the workers who are here or want to be here, to try to add more housing so that prices stay manageable, stay reasonable, hopefully affordable. More housing is needed. And as Paul mentioned, there's very little what's called greenfield land in the county on which we can, add units. So it becomes a redevelopment challenge. But that's a challenge that many other communities have met, and it can be done here as well. And it has to do with adding more diverse housing. You heard the phrase missing middle. So these are smaller housing units, might be, it might be turning single family homes over time into duplexes or quadplexes, assuming the lot is sufficient. Zoning changes will play a part, finding new opportunities to redevelop land and put multifamily homes there. So it's more density, it's more people living in the same footprint of land where today maybe there are one or two houses or a aging big box store that's not needed. That footprint of land now can be repurposed to serve the human beings who need housing in our community. So there are a lot of ideas in the plan, and community planners learn from each other and other communities. And so if you scan through using the links that we provided, if you scan through the plan, you'll see lots of recommendations about how housing might evolve to make better use of the land through redevelopment, more density, and acknowledging that that household sizes are smaller, and we need more small units than we have today, and we also need homes that are accessible and ADA compliant for people who have physical barriers. So you'll see a lot of information in the plan about those about those recommendations. I don't know if multifamily will ever be a noise-free environment, though. So, because you will have people living above you unless you're on the top floor. But that's just the reality of multifamily living, which is a place where many of us start. That's our first home for many of us, the apartment in a multifamily building or an apartment building. And there's not enough of it in Howard County because that is a type of what's called naturally affordable housing. It tends to be more affordable than that single family detached home.
Yeah, or as this is Paul, as my wife and I started out living in a basement of someone else's home. But yes, and Bettina, I think it's a great question. And I would say this is a critical inflection point for the question you raised, because this is the time to tell the planners and the council later when this comes before the council that you want to ensure that there is a diversity of housing types in the county. And to the credit of the HoCo by Design people, they did try to do that. I mean, as Dana said, there are a variety of options, and they have emphasized mixed use development at what they call regional activity centers. They've talked about missing middle, which is different types of cottages and small apartments, small units, and accessory dwelling units. I mean, but there are not. What we don't have are the zoning laws in place which encourage or permit all of this kind of development. And so I think this is the time to let them know that, you know, we want more than what we've had in the past, which is, and one of the reasons why we are facing this absolute critical inflection point is because now we have to be creative. We just don't have open space that we can put those Ryan homes on that you talked about. Now we have limited space. So let's be creative. If we're going to do a public facility, let's find a way to put housing as well into it, or let's do accessory dwelling units, or let's do missing middle. But anyway, I think this is the critical time for you to make that comment known, because I think it's absolutely critical to being able to develop the breadth and the diversity of housing that we want. And so it's a great comment. And this is the time to do that in making your comments to the report, which will be going in later this month.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry.
Thank
We
you.
have a hand raised by Bill. I'm going to go ahead and go.
Hi, Bill.
Yeah, hi. I want to ask you to talk more about the role of APFO in school construction, because Paul's charts were quite striking. We need 51,000 units. The plan calls for 25,000, but the current APFO chart, I believe, calls for fewer than 20,000 over that period. And that's the most that would be permitted. So it seems like we need to modify APFO or have a different way of coordinating school planning with all the construction planning, so that we can have schools that are needed when the houses are needed for the jobs that are going to be created.
Paul, do you want to?
Sure, I'll start, and then Jackie, you and Dana can enter and make your comments. But absolutely right, Bill. And in fact, the report recognizes that, and I think as a coalition and people on the call and others are interested, making sure that the school infrastructure is there to be able to provide for those who come into our county and the increasing need there may be. I think, however, that in a way it's unfortunate, but the process calls for a committee specifically to look at APFO and how to address the APFO concerns and needs in a separate process. I mean, I think, Jackie, isn't the APFO committee supposed to be established within the year, I think?
Within a year after adoption by the council.
Right. So you're absolutely right. And we do need to be, I mean, part of the reason why this county is attractive is because we have an infrastructure of schools which have very high ratings, and we don't want that to be adversely affected. But I think what's significant is that if we manage growth in a way which allows us to be able to provide the support that's needed for the schools, we can in fact have both. But we need to look at how APFO is integrated into the growth process, so that we don't. Right now, APFO is used essentially to stop growth. And I think we need to be creative about how we can apply it in ways that will allow us to continue to grow and meet the school needs. With the amount of resources we have, we should be able to do that. I do think it's interesting that their report said that as we grow, we actually have a net benefit. It's a positive development in terms of our net income over the cost of infrastructure. So I think there obviously are ways to do that. The plan does not give us answers. It recognizes the issue, poses the questions, and then calls for this APFO committee to be able to address them. So I think it's clear that we need to be able to do that, and we are committed to trying to find ways to make that APFO process work more constructively in terms of meeting housing needs and student needs.
Well done,
And-
Paul. Thank
And
you.
that's a great,
Dana?
thank you. I'm glad we have the recording going. I just want to also say that one thing that's very interesting about additional housing development is that when we talk about multifamily and activity centers and the idea of adding hundreds of people in a community all at once through a new development, it turns out that a lot of housing doesn't really impact the schools terribly. The biggest impact on school enrollment is from resales of single family homes. That's where the needle actually moves very significantly. So recognizing that, I think is part of the process of that Paul described, that we really need to recognize where school enrollment is truly impacted.
Yeah, and just as an example of that, I think my recollection may be a little bit foggy, but I think when Artist Flats was being discussed, and the concern was that by building 185 multifamily units, of which roughly half would be affordable, it would have a significant impact on the schools. I believe that the total pupil impact was somewhere in the teens. I mean, I don't know if it was a 14, 15, 16, 17. I mean, we weren't talking about hundreds or dozens. I mean, we were literally talking about a very manageable number, which it turned out did not significantly impact the school. So you're right. And I think it's important also to look at it that way as well.
Yeah. Absolutely. All right, I am going to ask if you have any other more comments or questions to put them into the chat. And I just like to move us along so that we can get to the part where Dana tells us how we can all actually comment on the plan and advocate for an improved HoCo by design. Dana?
Yeah, thanks, Jackie. And Bill McCormick, I saw your hand up. We'll have a few extra minutes at the end. If you can just hold your question until then, if that's okay, Bill. Thanks. All right, so I appreciate it. Thank you so much, Jackie and Bill, for everything you do on behalf of affordable housing and for the great presentation today. And I know that housing is a really complex and confusing topic. It's really challenging to try to fit all of the data and all of the recommendations into your brain and try to make sense of it. I have found that it really helps to simplify the issues by just going back and thinking about the humanity. We really haven't talked about people being impacted, but that's really what we're talking about here, is the health of our community and the human beings, the people, our neighbors, ourselves, our children, our parents. That's what we're talking about here. And the way I simplify this in terms of what's happening in our community is that, the reality is we have policies in place today that have choked off the housing supply to a level that's far below our needs. We need 20,000 more units because our housing policies have not allowed those units to be built. And so what's happened is, the community has decided through a political process and a pressure process that involves APFO and other concerns to create a situation where we have housing scarcity. And like most other essential commodities, when it's scarce, the price is going to go up. And so that's what's happened. We have a crisis of affordability in both, for sale homes and rental homes. And so for the county planners to now say or recommend that we should lower the growth targets for the next 20 years, it's just going to do nothing more than choke off the housing supply even further, because we're not going to stop hiring. We're not going to start attracting new employers and creating new jobs. That's good. That's good for the community, but it's terrible for the community if we're not going to build the housing for all these, not all of the new employees, but some reasonable percentage of them. That's just unacceptable to further choke the housing supply, because, you know, as the housing supply gets choked, people get choked. You know, we're already looking at tens of thousands of Howard County households who are paying unaffordable rents, or stretching way too far to buy a house, or unable to buy the house and try to build the intergenerational wealth. We're choking their opportunity to thrive and prosper. That's not justice. And we need equity. We need housing equity. That's what we have to demand. And, you know, I don't know if he was the original community organizer, but Frederick Douglass, 156 years ago or something, as he was trying to rally people in favor of abolition, you know, this memorable quote, "Power concedes nothing without a demand. It never did. It never will." And in Howard County, we have to recognize that there are lots of people on the other side of this issue. They don't want to see any development. The low growth targets are far too high, and they'll you know, go to great lengths to try to stop any new housing development for anyone. And so it's really important for not just for this coalition to deliver the response that we're proposing today, but everyone on this call, individuals can do that as well. You can submit your own response, your own feedback to the community planners and our elected leaders. And you can do that if your organization is a member of the coalition as well. We need to amplify. We need voices who are demanding equity, who are demanding growth, reasonable growth, to meet to serve the community, to serve the people in the community, everyone in the community. So the planners have made that possible through a feedback page on the HoCo by Design website. There's a link, and again, this will be in the materials that we send out later. And by the way, when you get the meeting materials, what you're looking at today, these slides, these will be a PDF, and all these links will work. If you forget where the link is, you can go into the PDF, but we'll give it to you in many ways. So you'll go to that page on the HoCo by Design website, and you can review the plan materials there. You can also click this button that says comment now. And it's a very fast process. The first page is your name and email address. Here is the second page. And question number 3 asks, how does HoCo by Design match your vision for Howard County over the next 20 years? Tell us your thoughts about HoCo by Design. So that's the place where that's your opportunity to provide feedback and to state clearly your opinion about what should happen with HoCo by Design. And if you have writer's block, if you don't like looking at a blank piece of paper or a blank computer screen, you know, you might just start it with affordable housing is important to you because why? Why is that important? Why is this an important issue? And we think that some of the elements that are important have to do with, you know, high rents and equity, gentrification, accessible housing, unaffordable homes, whatever. Just, you know, those, you might refer to those, any of those in your message that are personal, that are relevant to you. We would appreciate if you would close your message, or somewhere in your message, if you would amplify what you're hearing today from the Coalition Steering Committee, that you support the growth targets and other recommendations from the Housing Affordability Coalition. So something like that. Doesn't have to be long, but meaningful, obviously. And there are some other questions in the survey that ask you what your role is in the county, you know, whether you live here or not. Most of the questions I don't think are required. So again, you can complete this in just a few minutes of actual typing if you know, have the message straight in your head. So, so please give your feedback. It's very important. Other things that you can do to make an impact, please share the comments link with friends, with social media. Encourage everybody that you know to submit their own comments. Here's the link again. And again, we'll give it to you in other ways. So the more feedback that's delivered through that website, the better. Also, County Executive Ball is holding listening sessions this month. It's an opportunity to ask a question, tell your story, and ask him if he will support higher targets for housing growth. Let him know if you're disappointed by the disappointingly low targets, as Paul referred to them. So that's another opportunity to provide feedback. There are more opportunities coming. If you haven't seen this rough timeline, we're kind of here with the draft plan was released. The comment deadline is listed as January 16th on the website, but we believe it's at least being extended to the 23rd, possibly to the 30th. But don't delay. Get your comments in, get your feedback in right away. And then there are steps later. This is a long process. We'll just be completely transparent about that. Just to get the plan considered, amended, revised, approved in some form by the county council. It's going to go at least into the summer. And then there are steps beyond that having to do with, you've heard APFO, some zoning. It's a long process, but big change often doesn't happen quickly, and we need to be there for the whole process. So please do get your comments in as quickly as you can. Dawn is going to put a poll up. If there's anything that you want to share privately with us, you can do that in the poll. And Dawn, I don't know if there are other questions in there, but while you're answering the poll questions, if you decide to do that, we can leave the meeting open for about 15 minutes for any other Q&A or discussion. Feel free to check out whenever you want. That's really the end of our formal presentation today. At whatever time you leave, please go with our thanks and gratitude that you were here today, giving us your attention, and thank you for being part of this campaign.
Dana, there are some questions in the chat. Would you like me to read them, or?
Sure. Oh, I think everybody's got them
Okay.
on their, yeah. So
And
feel free to answer. Yeah.
We have Bill's, I think there are two questions. In
Yeah,
the
Bill
chat.
McCormack.
Please, yeah, let's go back to Bill.
And we should try to answer the questions in the chat too.
Okay, very quickly, thank you. In an effort to promote housing diversity and equity of housing types, rents, and prices in each community in Howard County, could we consider a recommendation that all new housing development and redevelopment move the affected elementary school free and reduced meal percentage toward the county-wide average farm rate? Thank you.
Let me just say, we will absolutely consider that, Bill. Would you mind, I know you have my email address, would you mind just sending that language to us so that we can, we'll take a look at that?
Sure, not a problem.
And if not in one of our kind of formal recommendations, guarantee you we will work it into conversation.
Very good. Thank you. I will send that. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then Harriet had a question about why single family sales could end up increasing school populations versus a multifamily project. And I think the reason for that is because oftentimes in the multifamily projects, you will find that there are a mix of 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units, which means that frequently the units are occupied by persons who are families without children or with one child, whereas a single family home with, given the prices of single family homes, is usually with a more established family unit, which may bring into the home 3 children or 2 children. And so that it's the child population that's typically higher with the resale units than it might be in the multifamily apartments. So I think that's one of the reasons why there could be a difference. And I think you're right too, also to ask about the focus. Is there a simple way to understand and address the ramifications for transportation, which is always an issue when speaking about added housing? And that's true. one of the benefits, I think, of trying to build up vertically in activity centers or in regional development areas like downtown Columbia or Gateway, or I think there are 3 or 4 activity centers identified in the county, is that you'll end up building in areas that are walkable, which is something that is promoted in HoCo by design, so that people can have ready accessibility, particularly people who may have limitations on affordability, where they can access basic necessities. But I think there also is there's a broad element of more transportation choices in HoCo by design. There's a chapter on that topic, and there's talk about improving the bus system and maybe linking up with Montgomery County and accessibility to major employment areas. So yes, I mean, it is a very relevant question, but I think one of the answers that they're trying to give by HoCo by design is to provide more walkability for housing so that people can live in areas where they can access services.
Other questions? Dawn, Dana, do you see any other questions?
I do not.
Okay.
Just the question, I don't know that when we record this, that the chat is saved. So just the question about, will there be other times when we can comment in the process?
Yes, and I just responded to them that yes, there will be multiple opportunities to comment, and be assured we will keep our members apprised of what those opportunities are and ask you to continue to be engaged in providing feedback and thoughts to our county leadership, whose hands it will now fall into here. So.
And Jackie, I would like to add just one thing to what you said.
Please.
And that's the last recommendation that Jackie mentioned, the recommendation that we accelerate and establish more specific targets for the development of the Gateway Regional Activity Center. I just would like to underscore that one of the disappointing aspects of the HoCo by design was this notion that they recognized Gateway was an important option for us to address this shortage. It's almost like somebody was thinking, oh my goodness, we really have developed a critical shortage by the numbers we proposed. But with Gateway out there, there's a real opportunity to try to compensate and have the units we totally need in the next 20 years. Well, if you don't do what I think Jackie was suggesting, if you don't try to accelerate that process and wed it into HoCo by design more aggressively, it's not really a solution. It's really just, the old proverb of kicking the can down the road. If there really is going to be a solution, then I think we have to look at it and do it aggressively. Like the decision was made to do the Housing Opportunities Master Plan, the decision to do HoCo by design. If we can do all of that, then there's no reason why we can't accelerate, maybe even have a Gateway master planning process begin next year. I mean, I just think if it is so critical, then it is important to make it an accelerated process to try to address the horrendous gap that we're creating.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you very much. Well, everybody, again, thank you very much for your participation this afternoon. We look forward to further engagement with you, and we are available. Dawn, quickly, would you throw into the chat our it's admin, our admin address where you can email us questions, comments. We will respond to those. And a reminder that we do have a website where we'll try to keep pertinent dates and information available for everyone. Thank you, everyone. Have a lovely evening, and let's keep working. Good night.